1 million years ago, in what is now South Africa, our hominid ancestors did something that would change everything. They controlled fire. Not wildfire, but fire that they could create, tend, extinguish, and restart at will. This was humanity's first great energy revolution and our first great existential compromise. Now, I'm sure there were skeptics. I don't speak Homo erectus, but I'm sure they warned, fire is dangerous. We've survived without it for millennia. Why start now? They weren't wrong. Fire is dangerous. People, places, and things get burned. But consider what fire unlocked. Cooked food that made nutrients accessible and killed pathogens. Metallurgy to make better tools. Warmth that extended habitable territory. Light that offered protection from predators. Fire created gathering spaces that fostered language, culture, and community. The benefits were transformative, world-changing, genus-changing. The costs were real, but acceptable. This pattern has repeated ever since. All energy is compromise. Each generation optimizes for its immediate needs, leaving the consequences for the future. It's not malicious, it's human nature. We solve the problems we can see and measure, the problems that touch us. Thomas Edison was solving for street and home lighting, and fossil fuels worked brilliantly for that purpose. Today, we're on the other end of that innovation, wrestling with the consequences of earlier solutions. For fossil fuels and nuclear waste, those future generations paying the price, that's us, right now. For renewable technologies and batteries, those future generations are our children. Let's pause for a second and ask a profound question. If our ancestors had perfect foresight about fire's long-term consequences, would they have done anything differently? Probably not. The benefits have just been too great. Humanity itself exists because of that choice. But here's what we can do differently now, where obligation meets opportunity. First, radical candor about trade-offs. Every energy solution has costs. Consider the numbers. Producing 1 ton of lithium can require up to 500,000 gallons of water, 500,000 gallons. In regions like China, Australia, Chile, and Argentina that already face water scarcity. Considering that a single electric vehicle battery contains roughly 17 pounds of lithium, 77 pounds of nickel, and 30 pounds of cobalt, and that 2025 saw about 21 million new electric vehicles produced. That's up to 90 billion gallons of water in a year for the lithium alone, and growing fast, of course. On the supply side, global solar panel production generates approximately 100 million tons of CO2 annually. Wind turbine blades, each weighing up to 36,000 pounds, end up in landfills because only about 15% of their composite materials are currently recyclable. These aren't arguments against renewables, they're calls to action, where obligation meets opportunity. We need transparent, comprehensive life cycle analysis of every technology we deploy. No more hiding environmental consequences in distant supply chains or distant generations. Second, invest in mitigation alongside deployment. Right now, we're installing solar capacity at a record pace, over 400 gigawatts globally in 2023 alone. And yet, less than 10% of the commissioned panels are recycled. Compare this to the European Union's emerging approach, requiring manufacturers to fund end-of-life collection and recycling before installation permits are granted. In battery recycling, companies like Redwood Materials are already recovering 95% of critical minerals from spent lithium-ion batteries, with capacity to process 5 gigawatt-hours annually. In other words, the pace of deployment must be matched by investment in solutions. Let's not repeat the toxic neglect of the nuclear age. Third, think systemically. Germany's Energiewende offers a cautionary tale. $580 billion invested in renewables, and yet CO2 emissions remain stubbornly high because grid infrastructure couldn't handle intermittent supply. Meanwhile, the Texas grid demonstrates the alternative. After investing $7 billion in transmission upgrades, they now routinely integrate 75% renewable generation on peak days. In addition, energy storage deployment must match renewable generation. California now requires 52 gigawatts of storage by 2045, nearly 10 times current capacity. Grid modernization, energy storage, smart management systems. These aren't optional add-ons. They're essential infrastructure worth hundreds of billions. Again, where obligation meets opportunity. Fourth, we need to act with thoughtful urgency. Denmark proves both speed and thoughtfulness are possible. They've achieved 80% renewable electricity in just 15 years, while simultaneously reducing energy costs and maintaining 99.99 grid reliability, the highest in Europe. They didn't rush blindly. They invested $2 billion annually in smart grid technology, demanded rigorous environmental assessments for every wind farm, and created local ownership models ensuring community buy-in. Climate change demands rapid action, but their experience shows that thoughtful planning actually accelerates rather than slows deployment. Less haste, more speed. Speaking of speed and scale, we also need the breakthroughs that are already emerging. Sodium-ion batteries are entering commercial production, eliminating cobalt and reducing lithium dependence by 70%. Some solar panel manufacturers are designing for 90% recyclability. Carbon capture facilities are removing 4,000 tons of CO2 annually, small now, but scaling to megatons within a decade. And new reactor designs promise nuclear power with passive safety systems that make meltdowns physically impossible. At the same time, energy utilities must transform from commodity providers to system orchestrators. We need policies that incentivize innovation while managing risks. Perhaps most crucially, we need to revolutionize how we use energy through demand response programs that already shift double-digit gigawatts of load in the US during peak hours. We stand at an extraordinary juncture. We're still playing with fire, just in different forms. Control of fire was the first step towards controlling our own destiny. The next step is doing it sustainably, where opportunity meets obligation. Make no mistake, it's still our fire. It's still our future to write. Let's make sure it all doesn't go up in smoke. For continued conversation and exploration of these ideas, connect with me on LinkedIn or at lincolnblevins.com. That's LincolnBlevans.com. You can also check out other episodes of Edison Squints on YouTube, and please subscribe and comment while you're there. I look forward to hearing from you, and thank you very much.